Welcome back in to the long shot here with friend Scott Van Pelt. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me. I had to pay this back. You came on with me. You were fantastic. I just hope I can be half as good a guest as you were for us.
Always, man. We like to hit our guests with a little bit of an intro. So we got an Emmy-nominated sports anchor. You may know him from his days at the Golf Channel, or maybe from the Scott Van Pelt Show on ESPN, SVP and Russillo, or the midnight edition of SportsCenter, which he now hosts. However you may know him, we're thrilled to have him here with us. And just thank you for taking the time, man, for being here. We know you're a busy guy, so thank you.
It's all good. Nominated is the key, never won. Nominated, bro. Never just sat there and waited till the end and never heard my name, not one time.
You're splitting hairs, man. I actually, I want to start out by retelling a moment between us. As you mentioned, I came on your podcast. We were on the cusp of playing in the finals.
Yep.
We had a great conversation. We were chopping it up, and you were asking me a little bit about my story. And as I have a tendency to do, I started to deflect a little bit, explain away some success. And at one point, I mentioned the word luck. And after the show, we're hanging on Zoom and just kind of going back and forth. And you kind of got on me about it. You said, listen, man, and I'll never forget this quote. It stuck with me and really stung me in the moment. You said, if it was luck, it would have ran out a long time ago.
That's right.
And just in that moment for me, first of all, I grew up watching you, grew up a fan. To hear that from you, I can't tell you how much it meant and really kind of helped shape my perspective for the series moving forward. But I guess I just want to start out by asking you, how in your career have you gotten to that point where you have that perspective? Are there times or is it just the journey in general that's gotten you there?
Well, first of all, the quote, guy named Lefty Driesell, he's in the Hall of Fame. He was Maryland's basketball coach. I grew up going to his camp, hoping I'd be good enough to play for him. I wasn't quite, but we knew each other in a roundabout way. And I saw a coach at a function, and he's got this big booming Southern voice, and he's like, "I'm proud of you, boy. You're doing great." And I said, "Coach, I appreciate it. I got lucky." And Lefty takes his big ass hand and slaps it on my back and said, "Boy, if it was luck, it would have run out by now." And I loved it, Duncan, because what that does is it allows you to have ownership in what you have made and built for yourself. And it's like the things you've talked about, the imposter syndrome. You're kind of sitting around waiting for the other shoe to drop. And, I didn't get into the journalism school at Maryland. I was a terrible student because I was a mess. I didn't go to class, blah, 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 blah. And I lucked into it. I had a back door that got opened, and I got a chance, and I made the most of that chance. But, 20 some odd years down the line, I think coach is probably right, because we might get lucky somewhere, but at some point it's not that. It's you. It's you doing the work. It's you earning your spot. And what you have to do, you, me, all of us, is allow yourself to just accept the compliment, right? Like, just allow yourself to believe, all right, I'm good enough to do this. And if I weren't, at some point, somebody would have figured it out. I'm like, this guy can't do this. He can't be on. So it's a cliche maybe, but it is this sort of journey of self and figuring out who you are and becoming comfortable enough and confident enough in yourself to know. Like when you step on the floor tonight, okay, maybe there's part of you that's like, man, this, the story's still incredible. Like, how did this happen? But you're out there because you can go. Okay, that's not a league full of imposters. You're there because you can go. And when I sit down at midnight tonight, or whenever the Lakers Jazz game ends, I assume, and I don't say this easily, but I assume it's because in that space I can go. Like, I know how to do that. I don't think it's that important, but I know how to do it. And at some point I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? There's other people that are better, maybe, but sitting here right now, like, not in here, you're not. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's not an arrogance. That's a confidence that you have to do it. So it's just a process of allowing yourself to believe that what you've done is allowed you to earn it.
Nah, I mean, there's so much there that first off, I can relate to.
Sure.
Specifically that line that you talk about between owning it and knowing it, and not taking it too far to where it's like coming off as brash and too much. I think if anything for myself, I'm too far the other way in that I can get in that mode of being passive and I don't want to come across as this or that. But it's this balance. But you're right in that it's got to be a deep inner belief, because there's no faking it. Especially, whether it's me playing at 7:30 or it's you when the lights come on at midnight, there's no faking it. That's for damn sure.
Here's an analogy I would make. When I moved up to Connecticut, I lived in like this shitty apartment in West Hartford. And I didn't buy a house because in my head, I'm still like, maybe this is counterfeit, right? Maybe I'm in this imposter, and maybe like I'm coming up here with Stuart Scott and Dan Patrick and Linda Cohen and Rich Eisen and, Chris Berman and all these, I could keep going, right? When I came up here early 2000s, I rented an apartment because maybe this whole thing is a charade. And eventually it's like, oh no, you can't do it, man. What I'd say is you got to buy a house. You know what I'm saying? Buy a house. And you might want to wait until you figure out where that free agent money's coming from. What the metaphor there is, it's like the Fred VanVleet, bet on yourself and then double down. And you having that belief, like that's why Fred's one of my favorite stories. Anytime I get a chance to shine a light on him on SportsCenter, I do, because I love the metaphor. That dude didn't get drafted, had a draft party and told everybody that night, we're good. You know how much, the balls you got to have to do that and then be right? Like, buy the house. Don't rent some shitty apartment. Buy the house and then earn the right to pay that house off.
Are there moments when you get up to Bristol and you're surrounded by these people that, you see on TV, and are there moments that those people kind of come down to earth and you realize that, they're just like me. I'm not that far off?
I think ESPN does an amazing job of making it like that. Like it's like people would be shocked. I mean, we don't have, like at ESPN, like we didn't have a parking spot. Like people think we have, someone runs and gets us coffee and does our dry cleaning. Like I didn't have a place to park, and neither did Chris Berman. Okay. Like we're all, and it's a little bit of Animal Farm, you treated, maybe not treated equal, but you're treated fairly. Certain people, like they earned their right to be, maybe you got paid more or you got a better schedule or whatever. But I guess what I'm saying, Duncan, is that it wasn't like, some people were first class and the rest were in the back. I mean, we were all kind of riding together, and people were great to me. Stuart was in particular was an amazing sort of, like he legitimized me because he showed me a lot of respect and love early. And a lot of that had to do me being a Maryland guy, him being a Carolina guy. And there was this fun ACC thing that he and I had. And plus he loved golf and I came from that space, and he knew Tiger and so did I. But Stuart making me out as like a made guy early was probably big. But I think you recognize the thing, Duncan, that I appreciate is the people did the work, man. Like people weren't showing up. Like if your show's at midnight, people didn't show up at 11 and hand me the things I'm going to read. Now they showed up at noon and did the work. And I respect that. That's important to me, to put in the work.
Scott, I've heard you talk about the sticky note that you have where you wrote you'd never work at ESPN. So you're talking about now, okay, you're on that set, you see these people, you realize you belong. There it is.
No way.
That's legendary. I will never work at ESPN. I don't know if you can see that. I tell people the story all the time. It sits on my desk. There it is. I will never work at ESPN.
Were you walking around the halls showing that off on day one?
No. But I knew it in my head. Like, and I've explained the story when I gave a commencement address at Maryland to the journalism school I couldn't get into. How about that?
I like that.
You like me now? What's up? Yeah, I couldn't get in. Yeah, you know what? None of y'all are gonna have a show, but maybe you will. I hope you do.
Say it with your chest.
I hope you get as lucky as me. But the thing of it is that was a defense mechanism. I didn't write that because I didn't want to work there. I wrote that down because when the guy at the Golf Channel said, you're going to work there, I said I wouldn't, because in my head, it was easier to think that I never would be good enough or be asked. So I created that excuse. Whoa, I created that excuse for myself. And so I save it now as a reminder of don't say what you won't do. I've been doing it for 20 years, man. The thing I said I wouldn't do, the thing I thought I wouldn't be good enough to do, it's 20 years. So I keep it right there, because I mean, and this is such a cliche, but like, you never arrive. Well, I mean, you don't. Like, at this point, 20 years in with my own show, like, I should be cruising, right? If that's truly what it was, I would just let somebody else, do it all, and I'd show up and read the prompter. No, you work harder now, because now that space belongs to me. So I got to keep earning it, if that makes any sense. But that thing stays right there at my desk.
That's awesome. I love the visual too. That's big time.
I mean, I've told the story so many times. Like, I'm not bullshitting. Like, I keep it. It's a daily affirmation, if you will.
For sure. We had Mark Titus on our podcast recently, and he told a great story about when you invited him to come on. You were doing like the selection show.
Yep.
And it's his first time, he's a staff writer. It's his first time really being in the bright lights. And I think he told it and you could kind of tell that he was a little bit nervous. And you go up to him and you're like, look, man, I don't need you to be Jay Billis. I don't need you to be Kara Lawson. I don't need you to reference, efficiency ratings or whatever. I need you to be Mark Titus. Yep. And I need you to bring that. What has it been about your career? Is it just the work that has given you the confidence to be unapologetically you? Because that's what people see every night when they tune into you. Yeah. It's that you have this personality. Honestly, before I knew you, it almost feels like as a viewer, you have a relationship with you, because you are so unapologetically you. So like, how have you gotten to that point? I
guess I figured out, like, people like Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, they're legendary, right? For sure. No ifs, ands, or buts. But people, I think they assume that when you get there that you're trying to sort of emulate them. But that really wasn't they weren't the guys for me. There was a local anchor here in DC. His name was Glenn Brenner. And sadly, he passed away too young. But he had this self-deprecating way about him where he made fun of himself, which gave him license to bust everybody else's balls. And he got that it was supposed to be fun, and everyone was in on the joke. Like, it was a big collaboration. Like, we're going to make this fun. And he was sort of my inspiration. And it takes you time in doing this to learn that you can be yourself. And like, as a white guy, that like, I would make lots of references to like rap music because I grew up playing basketball, and shocker, there was a lot of that music. And like Trouble Funk is a local go-go band. They did my music when I moved back here. Like, the music you hear, that's go-go music. Trouble Funk did it because I reached out to them and they knew that I knew who they were. Like, we used to warm up, Duncan, suburban DC back in the 80s to a cassette tape of Drop the Bomb by Trouble Funk. So like, nice, right, a cassette tape over a mic set, like a microphone up in the corner in a suburban gym. Like, it's horrible. But like, all of that stuff was part of my frame of reference. And so I decided I'm going to say that stuff. And there were people that are like, oh, you're trying to be this. I'm like, I'm not trying to be anything. This is just the stuff I like. And so I just decided I would be who I was. And there were times, look, I got pushed back at ESPN. There were people that tried to stop me. Like, I got called into an executive's office and said, you got to stop saying, let's go to Bentley's when Maryland wins. And I said, well, why? Well, no one knows who that is. I said, well, I mentioned the Wheel at Kansas. That's a legendary bar in Lawrence. I talk about Franklin Street in North Carolina. I said, you never say anything about that. You just don't want me to wave that Maryland flag. But I said, look, you put me on something else then. I don't like, it was kind of like I don't give a shit moment. Like, and I didn't blink. And I had just gotten this agent at the time. And I said, I don't know if maybe I'm in trouble here, but I just told him I'm not going to change what I do. And as it turned out, the guy that I had that conversation with got moved into a different space, not because he wasn't good at his job. It's just because that space with us wasn't where he was best suited. And over time, I just kind of, I don't know, I guess I had a connection, and I developed a connection with our audience where the powers that be didn't try to stop me. And there's a man named John Wildhack, who now is the athletic director at Syracuse, who was the guy that was sort of greenlit the idea of this show. And when, to me, like one of the most satisfying moments of my time doing this was before the show started. He was like, look, I don't want you to drive in the middle 2 lanes. Like, treat this like the 405 or whatever that big ass highway in LA is, the one with a zillion lanes. Like, I want you to really explore the space. Like, he wanted me to be me. And I thought, this thing might fail, but we've already won, because he's saying to me, this is for you to be you. And that was as gratifying as anything.
Well, and you're now the guy who's instilling that confidence in, whether it's Mark Titus or Duncan. I think it's so interesting because you're at the Golf Channel, right, and then you come to ESPN as like the golf correspondent. Uh-huh. But now at midnight, you're covering all sports, sure, but you're doing a lot outside of sports, whether it's the one big thing or best thing I saw today. You're oftentimes speaking towards things that are bigger than sports, that are outside of sports, the values that you are important to you and important to everybody. Did you always have that vision of being that guy, or did you just fell into it? How did that come about?
Kind of. Radio helped a lot in that. In radio, you got 3 hours a day, and man, that's hard to do. Like, I showed up super arrogant to radio because I was a TV guy. How hard could this be? And I've told this story before, but it's the truth. Like, I was filling in for Dan Patrick, and I came in with my super hot takes, and I was ready to give you the good stuff. And I'm like blazing, woo, woo, woo. I look up, it's 105. I'm like, we got to go to 4. And I'm fresh out of bullets, man. And it was like, oh no. And so radio was such a great way to learn how to connect to your audience, and also like how to write, how to take thoughts and write them out. And one big thing became something I did pretty much every day on radio. And they would be long form, and sometimes they're 4 or 5 minutes long. And I thought when the show started, I wanted to take that idea to TV, because it gives you a chance to do, like, I remember we wrote about Taco Fall, who's of course with the Celtics now. He went down to UCF, and his test scores got flagged because it's like, well, this kid kind of went to a bunch of diploma factories, and his grades are probably bullshit. Well, no, actually, he speaks 5 languages, and he wants to major in engineering because he's brilliant. And I did this big, long, free Taco Fall, basically, speech. And like 2 or 3 days later, he got cleared. And it wasn't because of me, but it was a chance for us to be part of the voice of advancing his cause. And it made me realize, all right, that radio idea will work in this TV space. And I've talked about losing my father, which connected to people in an amazing way. I talked about the birth of my daughter, and this was incredible. The day after I did this thing about my daughter's birthday, Steph Curry had 23 points in the fourth quarter against Houston, 33 in the second half. They beat Houston to close them out without Durant. I think I had that right. That's what I know. I know he had 23 in the fourth, and I know they closed out Houston. And we had Steph on, and we're getting to the end, and I'm trying to let him go, and he's like, "No, hold on. I just want to tell you that thing you said about your daughter yesterday was amazing." Because at the time he had his girls, but he hadn't had his son yet. And he's like, being a girl dad's amazing, and blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of great dads out there. And as I drove home that night, I'm thinking, here's one of the transcendent players of our time who's just had an all-time. Here's the wheelbarrow that I'm carrying my balls in fourth quarter to close out Houston. And he wants to say goodbye. He won't let me say goodbye till he says the thing about the thing I said about my daughter. And that's just There's no other way. It's just such a cool thing to feel like you're connecting to people in a human way, And so all of these things help me feel like, the approach we bring, and Duncan, you speak to connecting to people. It further connects you to people. When you're willing to share yourself, like your losses, your loves, the stuff that matters. I think that reminds us that we're all just people. And so much of life right now is this garbage with social media. It's all fake. No one acts like that. They don't act like that. They act like that on a screen, on a phone in their pocket. They don't act like that face to face. They don't act like that in a group. It's a made up construct. But humanity and decency and people that care about people and loss and love and all that, like that's what living your life is. And I learned I could do that in the space we have. And that's really it's really satisfying to learn that.
That's an unreal Steph story. I think it's, for me, like, so much of it boils down to like people just connect with what's real. And like you said, if you're willing to use your platform and be vulnerable and share things that aren't really of the norm, particularly for, I don't know if you consider yourself sports media, but it's not like you're flipping through the channels and you see that typically. I guess I want to ask, it seems as though like not conforming has been a strength of yours, in that it's allowed you to kind of stand alone, particularly with, you mentioned social media. I think just in general, it's put stress on, I think everything, but maybe particularly sports journalism, in that now everybody has every stat, every fact, every highlight even pinged directly to their phone. How has that put pressure potentially on you? Or not even pressure, but maybe how has it changed how you go about your business?
Pressure is the right word, because look, you used to have to watch SportsCenter to know, hey, how many Duncan get tonight against the Raps? Well, let's watch Dan and Keith. Well, now I got it in real time, and if somebody crosses you up and you fall down, I know that that's wow, what a shame, he has to retire now. Isn't that crazy? Like, it doesn't even matter if you make the shot. If a guy falls, he might trip, or someone might step on his foot. But
that's the worst. It's just, if you hit the ground, it doesn't matter how. If somebody makes somebody else hit the ground, it could be the most crazy circumstance. If you trip over yourself or your teammate or whoever, or a screen or whatever, it doesn't matter.
You have to retire, and the shot is inconsequential. That's the part that pisses me off. Like, did he make the shot? Didn't even make the shot. Nobody fell down. Who cares? But my point is that this is all happening in real time. The moment that something like that happens, I know, because there it is. So it's changed. Like, I don't have to tell you I don't have to assume that I'm telling you something you don't know. What I need to do is tell you why I think it matters or doesn't. And there's still I don't even know if need's the right word, but people don't mind watching the highlights of the night in sports because we like watching sports. So I can still do that, right? I can still do the accounting of the night's events, like that Michigan-Ohio State game, like that on Sunday. That was hours old, but that was some high-level basketball, and I enjoyed showing how those teams traded punches. Man, both teams shoot 53%. That doesn't happen in college. There's not a lot of bucket makers out there in college game. Well, there were in that one. So I think you can still show that highlight and still add something to it, even hours after the fact. But it's definitely, there's a push to be the opposite of where we were when we started. The guy that said you can't say, let's go to Bentley's. Well, now it's like, show us all of your personality, because that's the only way to differentiate yourself. So to me, you got to find that line where you're not trying too hard to be clever. Like, I'm not doing late night shtick necessarily. If I think something's funny, or me and Steve want to have a laugh, well, we're gonna. But you know what I always say is like a teaspoon of sugar's fine, but like a ladle of it makes you sick, right? That's why I'm not like a catchphrase guy. Like, that ship has sailed, I think. I don't think you can do a whole lot of that kind of shtick, because now people see it as uber corny. So got to find that line.
Davis, let me tell you, Nothing caps a long day off quite like a nice glass of wine. But sometimes it's hard to find the wine that you like. You know, myself in particular, I don't consider myself bougie, but I do have somewhat of a particular palate, you know?
And we all do.
And Bright Cellars is here to be the solution. It's a wine subscription service that helps you find wines you love while making wine more accessible to everyone. Bright Cellars is the only wine subscription that provides personalized wine matches and service based on your taste preferences and your palate.
Yep, that's right. By taking their simple 30-second quiz, Bright Cellars will pair you with 6 unique and personalized wines. How easy is that? And think about what's going on right now with the pandemic. It's important to stay healthy and at home when you can. And Bright Cellars allows you to skip the store while bringing personalized wines right to your door. That rhymes. They can even deliver based on your schedule.
I've heard that you've actually taken the quiz.
I took the quiz. I got some wine. I've only cracked into one bottle, but it's incredible. They send you your wines. They send you like little cards for each wine that tell you where they're from, some of the flavors or notes or tastes that you should be expecting from the wines. I'm not a guy who knows a ton about wine culture, but it made me feel like an expert.
Plus, what I'm also hearing is that if you don't like a bottle, Bright Cellars will work with you to include a replacement bottle in your next box and adjust your taste profile. So it's like live time wine feedback.
Yeah.
It's as good as it gets. Guys, this is a no-brainer. So here's the deal. We are giving Long Shot listeners 50% off your first 6 bottle orders from Bright Cellars. 50% off. That's half off.
That's a good deal.
That's a great deal. All you have to do is go to brightcellars.com/longshot. That's Bright Cellars, CELLARS.com. Bright Cellars /longshot. You can take their 7-question quiz to get your wine matches and receive 50% off your first 6 bottle order. This is a great deal to try new wines from all over the world. I'll tell you what, Dave, I'm currently in season, so trying to, stay away from that, but I can't wait to break into it in the off season. I'm definitely going to get me some Bright Cellars.
As you should.
Davis and I want to take this time to thank Amp Human for sponsoring this episode of The Long Shot. Amp Human is a human performance company dedicated to helping athletes at all levels unlock their limitless potential. Their latest innovations, D+ Lotion, is a first of its kind gel-based lotion that delivers vitamin D directly through the skin.
That's right. With limited sunlight during winter and more time indoors, which I think all of us have, there's never been a more important time to supplement with vitamin D. Just 2 pumps applied to the inner forearms contains 5,000 IU of vitamin D3 to boost your immunity, improve sleep quality, and support brain function. All very important things. Backed by clinical trials, it's proven to triple your vitamin D levels within 3 to 4 months of daily use.
I mean, I live down here in Miami and I still don't get enough vitamin D. So it's great to hear that AMP has our solution. So say goodbye to pills and say hello to D+ Lotion, the easiest way to do vitamin D. Visit amphuman.com/longshot and use code LONGSHOT15 to get 15% off D+ Lotion today. Once again, that's amphuman.com/longshot and use code LONGSHOT15 to get 15% off D+ Lotion today. I don't know about you, Davis, but I can't wait to check it out.
I agree.
Yeah, no, you certainly find it. Since you brought it up, I just wanted some quick insight. Give me a Big Ten hoops take. What do you got? Just something.
Michigan's so nice, man.
They're the real deal, right? They gotta be.
Yes. And you know what I'm impressed with is how like the transfer market now is like a crazy thing. It's like free agency in college basketball. But the guard from Columbia,
Mike Smith,
I'm sorry. And Chaundi Brown from Wake, like they fit in a way where they're like the exact pieces of the dish that we're missing. And like, I think it was Smith the other day made a play where he went baseline and threw a bounce pass to Hunter Dickinson in the lane.
Crazy.
And it's like, how do you guys have that connection already when you've only played together for this long? Like, and like Livers, who I called Livers for several years, and no one corrected me. I'm like, how did I get this man's name wrong? And like, no one's just like, yo, Van Pelt. I love how they play. I love that everybody can pass, dribble, and shoot. You don't have to hide anybody. Bucket makers, but Ohio State's got them too. Like that was like a Rocky fight. Like they took punches, and I thought Ohio State was going to win, because if Michigan makes 10 threes and a half and only leads by 2, that's a bad trend, because you're not going to make 10 more threes. But they still won going away. So the Big Ten is absurd. Like Penn State in the Ken Palm is like 40 maybe, and I think they're like third from last in the league. Like look at the bottom tier of another conference, and the teams can't play. And look at the bottom of the Big Ten, and it's like you don't want any of them. You know, it's crazy. Everybody's all year's been saying Gonzaga and Baylor, and who else? And I'm saying, all right, Gonzaga and Baylor and Michigan and Ohio State. And Villanova's there too, but let's not act like Michigan's not right there, not too far off the bumper.
That's good stuff. You've given us some absolute gold in terms of advice and perspective already. I'm curious, because we're 2 absolute amateurs. We're just kind of getting started in this, sports journalism or whatever you want to call it, field. Give us some advice, just overarching or specific as you want to get, whatever you got. We're eager and our ears are open.
All ears.
Ask questions.
Well, this is a good start then, right? I'm asking you a question.
Okay. What did you? This is a good start. See, this is a good start then, comma, right? Question mark. See, right was the question. What happens in our business oftentimes, let's say as an example, let's say you have an insane game and you score whatever, 30. And my guy, Jason Jackson, is going to talk to you afterwards. Now, if he says to you, man, you really got it going in the third, he didn't ask you a question. I'm not saying he would do that, but if he did, you should say, do you have a question? Because that's not a question, that's a statement. And too often in this business, people just make statements. Man, you really got to go on in the third. Okay, same thing, but what was the difference in the third quarter? What happened? Did you guys run like one set that got the light turned on? Like there's a way to ask a question that opens a door. You have to ask questions. I'm fucking terrible at asking short questions because I have so much that is interesting to me and I know stuff and then I want to flex that I know because that's just sort of what hosts do. And then the next thing I know, I've talked for like a minute and I want to crawl into a hole and die. Try to ask short questions. Like Larry King was a genius. Like the best question could just be, why? What happened? Like, because all you want your guests to shine. And so when you ask long questions, you're taking way too much of the oxygen in the room away from the person who should have it, who's your guest. And then, and this is another thing people largely don't do. Listen. It sounds basic, but say you ask me, about, hey, when you got there, were people like, did you find people were good to you? And I said, well, everybody but Dan Patrick. Dan and I got into a fist fight one night. We were drinking, and things got ugly, and we fought, and I kicked Dan's ass. And if you then pivot to, all right, so tell me about. At that point, you have to be like, whoa,
right.
Where was this at? Right. By the way, none of that happened. I'm just giving you a theory. I want to make sure this doesn't get chopped up. And
are we sure? This didn't happen?
That's the soundbite.
Patrick fought. None of that happened. But my point is, if your guest gives you something, because you guys seem very prepared, you have an idea what you want to get to here.Ed when you and every interview I have some idea of where I want to go. But if in the middle of that, your interviewee opens the door to like a room in the house that you didn't even know existed, you got to go in that room. And you got to be prepared to abandon everything you had on your list to find out what's in that room, because what's in that room might be far more interesting and maybe never had been talked about before. So if you ask short questions that are questions, and you listen and you talk to people like people, right? And I think you really do. Like you guys engage in a way that's conversational, as opposed to it gets stiff if it's like, I ask you a question and then you say an answer. It feels stiff, as opposed to just sort of this free flowing sort of conversation. So like that's what I was getting at with Titus, is just be you, man. And you've seen, like, he's unapologetically him. He's created a great lane and is a star in the space, and I love it for him. But you just have to have a champion for you early on to let you know it's okay to do that. You know, I think if you're not sure about it. So I mean, you guys just be you. Be who you are, and because everybody else can be them better than you can be them. So
I love it. That's great advice. Here's my trial for a short question. So you've talked about, you just referenced, you have all this knowledge. You want to keep questions short though. How do you stay on top of all this news? Because like we talked about, it was golf specifically. Now it's everything. How are you making sure that you're in tune with everything going on across a bunch of sports?
Like most people, I think I live with an ear out. Like yesterday with Tiger was a good example. It was like, I heard something, I saw something on Twitter. I immediately reached out into the golf world. It's a small community of people that are pretty connected, pretty tight. And I was able to find out pretty quickly that he was injured, but it wasn't like going to threaten his life. And so I'm thinking, okay, thank God for that. And then you spend the rest of the day kind of just with you know, a line in the water, so to speak, is there anything more that we can find out? And I wasn't as interested, honestly, from like a news perspective, as this is a guy I've known for a long time. So it was way more personal. But I try to read a lot. I'm lucky in that I'm boring. I like sports, you know, like people, this is so embarrassing, but people are like, oh man, have you seen like Yellowstone? Have you seen? No, I haven't seen any of them. Well, you know, I watch games because I find games interesting. The people that play them, the storylines that surround them. Like, I got little kids. I got married late, so I got little kids that occupy my time and my attention, and I like sports. So it's not a chore for me to be up on it. Now, do I know my one blind spot at the moment is baseball, which is going to get ready to get geared back up. Like, I'm really dark on baseball, but I'll get reacquainted in hopefully in time. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't find it like a chore to keep up with stuff. It's what I would largely do on my own. And then you also have like a staff of people whose eyes and brains I trust. People bring stuff to me every single day. Hey, did you see? Did you know? No. What is it? Oh, it's this and it's that. Then I spend some time with it and think, oh, that's really interesting. We should talk about that. I wish I had an army, because then you'd never miss anything. And there's times you miss and you think, how do we miss? But there's only so many hours in the day and so many eyes that we've got. So it's a lot though, man. It is a lot, because to the point Duncan made earlier, there's somebody else out there that knows that thinks you should know as much as they know, particularly about their team. I don't know as much about their team, your team as you. I don't, but I might know enough to be interested in that, to talk about it. And that's I get you in trouble with soccer guy. Soccer guy always gets mad you don't know as much about soccer. Me and Russillo used to talk about that all the time. So if I don't talk about it, I suck. But when I talk about it and don't know as much as you, I suck. Well, then what would you like me to do?
Can't win.
Nope. So you know what I'm going to do? Sit over here and lose. Have fun on the pitch.
You mentioned your relationship with Tiger. I'm just curious. Obviously, you know, early on in your career, you were covering him early on in his career. I'm just curious of your opinion on, I don't know if you watched it, the documentary that came out on HBO, if you have any sort of insight, or just from somebody who's been there, covered it, just what your thoughts are, or maybe you haven't watched it.
I didn't see it, but a lot of people I know did. My guy Steve, Stanford Steve, he's my TV guy, and he was like, bro, I mean, like, I don't see him as some infallible figure. Quite the opposite. I think he's shown the world, that he's quite capable of making a lot of mistakes. I've just known him a long time, so I guess I saw a guy that was like, and I mean, I think maybe the doc kind of exposes in the right word, illustrates that, like, he showed up as a pretty socially awkward kid at Stanford, and then he becomes this rock star with access to any and everything. And I guess, you dive in the deep end with that, which I don't know who would have the wherewithal to say, no, I'm good. At some point you just get sick of hitting 4 irons, I guess. But I think he's a guy what makes him more interesting now at this stage of his career is, as the balding guy with the fused back in a divorce, you can relate to, or at least the middle-aged guy can relate to, well, he kind of messed his life up, but he got a chance to redeem it. Like there's an arc to the story that no one ever imagined, which is like a redemptive arc. And I never imagined that would be required, but he made it required. And then that's why that 19 win at the Masters was so, I think, well received. People were so excited to see him be him again.
Incredible. I want to ask also about, because they're one of my fondest memory of my childhood is This Is Sports Center commercials. I want to know if you were involved in the creative process, or are you just kind of, is someone coming up with it and you're just kind of the actor, or are you guys involved in that?
The spots were always brought to us, and then things happened in the process of doing it, an ad lib line here, or a moment, but it was Wyden Kennedy was the ad agency behind it. And then a few years back that ended, which was a shame because it was a hell of a run. But it was funny. They were almost like, if you had an idea, they almost didn't want to hear it because there was some intellectual property line that like couldn't be crossed. So it was like, if you have an idea, just don't say it out loud, because it's like it needed to be theirs. But once the spot came to you and whatever you turned it into, you were all good. Like, I mean, I was lucky because I was in, like, LeBron in the Chair to me is an all timer, just because it's just visually preposterous. And, looking back, he was still like he was young King James, like he wasn't fully anointed King James. And so it was visually stupid. And then the back and forth, he was great because he's so deadpan. And the funny thing about that is, like, after we did that, I said, hey, I want that chair. Like, I wanted to get it and like put it in my house. Think what a flex that would be. Like, somebody comes to your house and you have like regular nice stuff, and like, oh, what's with the red velour chair? Oh, that was LeBron's chair. I gacked it from him for the ad. But they claimed, oh, that was like a prop, and I think that's bullshit. Someone took that chair, and I want to know who has it.
So is that your favorite, if you had to pick one?
That and the first one I did. The first one I did was with a guy named Rich Beam, who had won the PGA Championship. And I was so excited to be in a spot. Like, this is Sports Center ad, and I get to be in it. And the joke was, if you win the PGA, you win the Wanamaker Trophy. And the Wanamaker Trophy is a big-ass trophy. Like, it is this enormous thing. And so he was in this BMW convertible, and the joke was he had the trophy in the passenger seat with a seatbelt on it, and I was in the trunk. And so he pulls into the spot, and they pop the trunk, and I climb out of it. Well, I'm 6'6", and I was in the trunk, and I got in and out of it like 9 times. And I finally said to the director, I said, listen, whatever you need that you don't have, you need to get on this take, because I'm not getting in that trunk again. And they used the first take. So it was a lesson to me, the first time eager guy, like, give them your best, but at some point you can probably shut it down. Stuart Scott and I did a Arnold Palmer making an Arnold Palmer, which is pretty legendary.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's 15 seconds long, and it's just Arnold making it, and me and Stuart are watching. And that one went so long that at some point Arnold said to me, I shot movies that didn't take this long. And I told the director, we probably need to wrap this one up. But the Arnold one, the Stewart, the Arnold one with Stewart, the first one I did just because I'll never forget like how excited I was. And then the LeBron one, just because it wasn't iconic because of me, but it was iconic because of the chair and him. Like those are the ones for sure.
An all-time one for me is LaDainian Tomlinson with the visor, and he's throwing mail in the wrong slot. I think that's hilarious.
A bunch of them like just got made up on the spot, like because apparently that one wasn't what was scripted for LaDainian, and like he was there and there was the visor, and they just thought it would be like a funny thing. Like these were very clever and creative people.
So good. All right, so we ask all our guests, a specific question about their journey. I just want to ask, and you've touched on so much, but is there a moment or a conversation or a moment of adversity that helped really shift a perspective or serve as a springboard for you, that when you look back and reflect, it's like, man, that changed everything? Is there one or two moments that really stick out?
There's one for sure. Tiger won the Masters in 97. And in 98, I drove to Doral to go to the locker room for one reason. I just was waiting for him to finish. When he finished, I said, hey, when you play at Bay Hill, will you sit down and talk to me? I just kind of want to run it back the Masters. He's like, fine. I asked him directly. Well, we get to Bay Hill, and I see Jimmy Roberts from ESPN, and Jimmy's like, oh, are you here? Are you here to talk to Tiger too? And I was like, I don't know about two, but I'm here to talk to Tiger. He's like, oh, I'll flip you for it to see who goes first. And I said, I'm not flipping you for anything. I drove to Doral 2 weeks ago to set this up. Like, I'm going first. And Jimmy, it was not adversarial, but he was kind enough to let me go first. I was told I had 5 minutes. Okay. I sit down with Tiger. We start talking. It's clear he hasn't done this yet. He hasn't gone through the whole thing with anybody yet. 45 minutes later, we're still talking. And he is as good as you'll ever see him. Again, not because I asked short questions. I probably didn't even ask questions. But he was so present in that place, right? Like he's taken me back vividly into the moments as he is destroying the field and winning as the youngest with the lowest score of the whole bit. And I never wavered. I never looked at the people that wanted me to wrap up. I'm like, I got the guy. We're in the moment. I'm staying in this moment until I'm done. And we got done, and they wanted to murder me. But I went back to the Golf Channel, and it's so weird, man. This was a long time ago, but it's wild how you can vividly remember. We were trying to get a segment, like a 5-minute segment for the show, and I came back, and I went to see this producer, and he's like, we got a segment? He's like, yeah. And I said, no. He's like, no? I said, we got a show. And he said, what do you mean? He said, come with me. And we went in the back, and like by the time we were done, like all like the execs, the Golf Channel's like a couple years old. This was like a moment. We popped the tape in and we pushed play, and for 45 minutes, like people are just standing in the hall not moving, and they're listening to Tiger. And he was riveting because he was so present in taking you through what that was. And that moment, fellas, like put me on the radar of people, because like I was just some nobody at the Golf Channel, and the Golf Channel was still kind of like the what? But this is Tiger Woods, and that interview, like it, you talk about like a moment you feel like I knew, and that like I was ready for that. I was waiting on that moment, right? As the song says, the time came that I owned it. Like I knew what I was supposed to do, and I did it with him. And so that made me feel like, all right, now what? You know what I'm saying? Like it made me, it's like, trust what you're going to do, trust your relationship with the subject, forget the outside noise, do the job, and then trust that the job will sort of carry you. And largely it did. I mean, it really, that moment changed the trajectory of what I was doing. No question.
It's crazy because you think about, that day, what if Tiger, just has a terrible morning, right? And he's just in no mood to talk to anybody.
I think of it often. And, you know, that's why yesterday was a heavy day for me. Cause like, it's not the golfer. It's the guy that's become like a professional friend, you know. You got to keep your distance, but you know, we've become whatever we've become. It's more than just somebody I know. I've known him a long time, and I've told him, like, we've had a chance to speak like as humans, and I've thanked him for. I'm like, look, you've made my career. And he jokes that like without me, there's no you, and I'm like, that's entirely true. I said to him, I said I was the Cosell to your Ali. I said I just hope I wasn't quite the asshole that Cosell, you know, either was or pretended to be, you know, like he made my career. But you know, if that moment, you're right, in that day, if it's just like, nah, I just don't feel like it, or if he didn't want to give me what he gave me, who the hell knows, man? It's nuts.
That's wild. I think it's awesome that you're able to share those with the people that you work with, first off, but also able to look back on it with that perspective. All right, to wrap it up, we'll do this undrafted, which, you know, as I mentioned, is becoming commonplace in sports media. You know, everyone's talking about it.
Everyone.
I've heard it. I've heard it's changing the entire industry.
The entire landscape.
The whole thing.
Yeah, has been flipped on its head. So your answers will be, you know, ridiculed and examined deeply. So just keep that in mind.
All right.
First one, we got an underrated interview. Maybe somebody that you did multiple times, had conversations with. So it can't be a Tiger, it can't be a, you know, LeBron or something like that. But somebody
Beverly.
Ooh.
I remember that one actually.
Or
you've probably done it many times, but I remember one of them specifically after he got his deal.
Out the mud. That's how I started it. You know, came out the mud. Like that's the saying, right? If you come from circumstances, rise above the circumstances that might have kept you down. I mean, this man went around the world to play the game, and he was supposed to go on with Simmons, but he drove down to Los Angeles to our studio to do our show. And we're like 7 minutes in, which for a TV show, like that's a pretty sizable chunk. And I tried to say goodbye, and he's like, well, hold on. He's like, I didn't drive down out the hills to talk to you. He's like, what else you want to talk? I'm like, well, I don't know. What else do you want to talk about? And you know what strikes me about him, and I'd say it about you as well, Duncan, that it's a compliment. A lot of athletes aren't interested in anyone but themselves. And that's easy to be when everyone orbits around you. He asks questions of me about me and my family, and I think he's legitimately interested. And that's just a good way to be, like to understand that you're not the only people on earth, the guys between the lines, or the guys everyone, you know, is paying attention to. So he's engaged on a human level. He's entertaining as hell, and he's Mr. 94 feet. Like that's who he is all the time. And he's been on with us on a number of occasions. And, you know, I look forward to a chance. I hope we're in the same place at the same time, and we could sit down over a meal, which I assume would last for 6 or 7 hours until he had been exhausted whatever he was interested in. But like Patrick Beverly, is he a superstar? Maybe not. But like very few people that we have had on the show have I walked away from shaking my head and thinking, man, that guy was awesome. And he was.
You bring up a super interesting point that I've actually also kind of seen firsthand. As athletes, so many of our conversations are questions directed towards us. And it's not just in media, but really particularly throughout our day. In that if you run into somebody, the first thing is they're curious about you and they want to ask about you. And there's a propensity to get caught up in that to the point where if you don't actively try to flip that switch on and be engaging and converse outwardly, there's certainly, you can fall into that trap of just all of a sudden everything is just about you all the time.
But I don't think it's a trap. I think it's how your worlds are constructed. Like everything is very engineered so that's all you ever have to think about, right? You got to think about getting shots up, making shots, doing your job, winning games, and everybody wants to talk to you about that. But like, there's a whole world around you that doesn't have anything to do with any of that. And if you're not looking into it to try to be a citizen beyond that, like I don't fault people for it, but I respect them. I respect the athletes I meet who I think recognize that and are trying to be part of something beyond just the, their little, the arena, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say it's just a trap in the sense that if you're staying in there, you're missing out on a whole lot. Like there's so much
Yeah.
to engage with
sure.
outwardly, that it's like, to think that anybody that they have the self-importance that it's like everything is about them is problematic. But I hear you. That's awesome to hear about Patrick.
That's an all-time undrafted answer leading into conversation. So I would say you're 1 for 1. You've got 2 more, no pressure. But yeah, that was elite. Next one I'll ask is golf course. So underappreciated golf course. We don't want Augusta. We don't want Pebble. But is there one in your mind that, maybe doesn't get the love that it deserves?
Now, do you want the course that I personally love more than any other? Can I tell you about the Midway Par 3 in Lewis, Delaware? I've talked about it through the years. I can't.
I love it. Oh yeah.
No, of course.
Let it rip.
It's my favorite golf course in the world. I have been to all of the best ones. Well, I shouldn't say all. There are like, if you're a super golfy, like Bandon Dunes, and like there's I haven't seen everyone. I haven't played everyone. But if you're asking me a golf course that is the absolute essence of what the game is, the Midway Par 3 in Lewis, Delaware is where me and my boys have played thousands of holes of golf. Sometimes, lots of times, no shirts, lots of times hammered, all the time for money, pride, trophy. Hold on.
Oh boy. Oh, he's getting a trophy.
The props this episode have just been fantastic.
I mean, it's no big deal. It just says champ on it, and I won this bad boy. I got pictures of a lot of the different holes. I got pictures of the fellas standing there. Like, what it represents to me is the friendship and memories. And now we're old, and I would have assumed long ago we would have stopped playing there. But it's now become sort of the crown jewel of our social calendars. The summer day we play golf there. And Max Homa, who won last week, was sent out a bunch of pictures of this course he plays in California. And I'm sending him pictures of Midway, and he's like, that place looks awesome. I'm like, you don't even know. And it's the same kind of deal, because this course he plays, I think it's Chica or something he said it was. And I'm like, what's the distance there? He said the shortest hole is 60, the longest is 150. And I'm like, that's Midway. Midway's got like a 70-yard hole and a 150-yard hole, and the rest are all,
somewhere in between
100-yard holes. I got some hole-in-ones out there. No big deal.
Whoa.
But that's my favorite. And it's because I do golf, but I'm not like Mr. Country Club guy. I mean, I appreciate the game for the camaraderie of it. And no place represents that better than Midway for me. And it's, what are we, mid-February, like mid-July, we'll be out there. And now that I live locally, I can make some road trips down there, maybe do a little site survey, see how the greens are running,
I love it, man. That's 2 for 2 for sure.
2 for 2.
Last one. Obviously, everyone knows you're a Maryland guy. I want your Maryland basketball player. I want like a lunch pail, kind of not like a star-studded Juan Dixon type of thing, but somebody that you've just enjoyed watching play at any point that you're just a fan of.
Gravis is an all-time favorite, but he was a first-round pick, and he was
All-American also.
He was the ACC Player of the Year,
and
like he's not a lunch pail guy, but like he to me, like I'll love him forever. And then the guy I would give you, like, he was a first-round pick. So, like, is he a lunch pail guy? I'll tell you why I think and you don't have to give me a 3 for 3, because I really don't care what you say about my answer here, because it's my answer. Maryland had a guy named Buck Williams, and he was from North Carolina, and he was an undersized 4'5". He was like 6'8", and he played at Maryland when Ralph Sampson played at Virginia. Now, Ralph Sampson was 7'4", and like he stayed for 4 years in college, which is just, you think about how ridiculous that is now, where if you've made 2 jumpers in a row in the tournament, you leave early. But Buck played when Sampson was at Virginia, and it was back in the day when you used to do intros where you'd run out and then the other guy'd run out and you'd slap hands. And when Buck used to come out and slap Sampson's hand, you could tell that Samson was mortified because he knew that Buck Williams wanted to rip his head off and would do anything to do that. And so Buck, you know what? I can cuss. When I was little, and I'm a little kid in Cole Fieldhouse, and the student section's chanting, "Don't fuck with Buck," and I'm like, "Dad, what are they saying?" And he's like, they're just saying, you know, and I'm, well, what's he going to say? I know what they're saying. I just think it's great. But he was that dude, man. He was an undersized post player who wasn't afraid, who went on to have a great NBA career and represent, you know, Maryland. I think we always kind of felt like chip on our shoulder people. Didn't always felt like we weren't invited to the dance, so to speak. And then they won a title and kind of changed how people saw themselves a little bit. But Buck, even though he doesn't fit their bill necessarily, I think the mentality is why he made it, because I think he had a blue chip mentality, even though he was, you know, an excellent player. And he was a bad man.
That's a great answer. I can't dispute that. Scott, thank you so much, man, for taking the time. We know how busy you are. You got a million things going on. So to take time out of your day to chop it up with us two clowns means a lot.
It's a pleasure. I off air, I want to find out the story. Actually, let me ask one question on the way out. Like, what's your guys' story now? Like, were your boys from back in the day? What is it?
Dave, you can take this one.
We are boys from back in the day. Yes. So we went to Phillips Exeter together for a year. We played basketball together, and then I've just sort of latched onto his coattails since.
Oh, well, why aren't you in the NBA? What happened?
Look, I could give you a long list of reasons, but I can't guard. I can't go anywhere inside the 3-point line.
Neither can he.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that's not a great excuse on this.
Where
podcast.
We really start to differ is I'm 6'1", and so I'm not really getting my shot off against anybody.
He is a lefty though, and he can shoot it.
I'm sure he can. I mean, you can, you know, he walks like a ball player. I can see that. Like I can tell he's got a little bit of swag to him, but like, that's awesome. No, but how cool is it though? Like to see your guy become a guy. Like, I mean, what an amazing thing.
It's unbelievable. It really is. And when we had Mark Titus on, we touched on this a little bit, but it's a balance of, it still doesn't feel real. It's incredible that he's here, but he clearly belongs and he's just getting started. So, you know, you don't want to make it too big of a deal, but there are many moments where you flip on ESPN and Scott Van Pelt's talking about Duncan, and it's like, what is going on? I was eating buffalo chicken calzones with this guy in 2013 in the dorm at Phillips Exeter.
I might have sent a text after Bertans and Harris got their deals about what was coming for the future. So all I know is you should be on scholarship for the rest of your life because, you know, if what's the line? Like, if I'm going to eat, if I eat, we all eat. I mean, we
all eat, man. Right? We all eat.
I'm just holding on to the coattails
too. Can you play? Are you a stick?
So I'm so glad you bring it up because I've put a prop on my bed for every conversation. Oh. And you're the first guy who's called it out. I just paying my respects to you in the golf game. Just threw it on the bed.
And I had props. I had trophies. I had the Post-it note. I want to be like when you run through the end of the year, like who are our favorite guests? I just want to make like honorable mention. That's all I want. Man,
you're up there. And as for golf, we're both pretty much hacks.
Yes.
But we love to be out there.
Well, sometime when I'm down in South Florida, I'm serious. We'll get out there and we'll see what we got. I've seen your swing. Your swing's good.
I need some tips, man. We'll get out there. We'll get it right.
I see good golf. I talk about good golf. I don't play good golf, but we'll sort that out. You know what I'm doing right now? I'm doing what I did with Russillo. I'm terrible at goodbye. Just let it be over. This is over. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm sorry.
Thanks again, man. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right, boys. Be good.